right, I don't have the photo, but I do have my phone. So, our fourth stimulus is an art stimulus. This is art.
Oh my god.
Oh, it's giving acid trip?
Yeah, I was about to say that looks like a guy who talks about empathy and he's like, after smoking weed, like and my spiritual awakening, and my ego death.
My plasticity has just like extensive right now.
Yeah, like I know what's been said about me in the past, but like I'm a new man.
Oh, now I understand what it is. It's the debate between head and heart and the balance.
Pretty much. So, what is the debate between head and heart?
Oh, I remember this. Okay.
When I say what it is, I don't mean what is a factual thing. I mean, what do you think it is?
I can't give you a straight definition because I don't think my brain can do that at the moment. But I think it's like thinking with your head or thinking like I'd say rationally, rather than thinking with emotion and feelings.
Is there an assumption there that all emotions are irrational?
For me, yes.
Really?
So you
Really?
agree with that?
To a certain point, yes.
So the emotion of like saving a life is irrational because
because
it's an emotion.
No, but I personally think that someone could do something out of emotion that isn't necessarily rational to actually tackle and appropriately handle the situation.
What are you defining as irrational?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, so it depends. It's definitely circumstantial. Irrational would sort of be like, oh my god, this person's dying in front of me. Panic. What am I going to do? Oh, we're in Australia. Let's call 911. Do you know what I mean? Like just feeling.
But I think that's more. I mean,
Stupid.
Yeah, I think that the feelings that we have can be rational because they are our way of like perceiving and understanding the world around us, because we make judgments based on how we feel things, not just how we see things. I mean, that's like what all of our actions are guided by, and like that'll change between people as well. And the fact that it does change between people and between cultures shows that the decisions that are guided by our feelings actually are this huge part of everybody's lives, and we wouldn't be the same if we didn't follow them, and we might be more similar. But I don't know if it's necessarily like in this circumstance, are we trying to decide which one is better to think, like which one is more important, or like the impact they have on each other? Like what are we trying to decide?
Well, the question is up to you guys. What question do we want to answer?
I think we should find yeah.
But before we go on, just on your point, are you saying that emotions are rational because they are the way we perceive the world? Or are they rational for some other reason?
Yes.
And they're also the reason
I think
we perceive the world?
Well, they are rational because we perceive the world through them, but that doesn't mean that way of perceiving the world is rational, per se. That we shouldn't base everything off the way we feel things, but we do feel things, and that guides our decisions, but that's not justified necessarily.
So from like a purely like a pragmatic stance, that the reason that because we perceive most things through our emotions, then it's most practical to see it, to use that as our like justification for how we go about things.
Well, I mean, because sometimes we don't have that many other ways to actually justify things. If we just thought through everything logically, there's no kind of right or wrong. As we've established today, we're talking about philosophy, there is no concrete moral right or wrong. And so the best way to do things is through the way we feel that they should be done, because there's no actual definitive answer, and the only way for us to have our own answers is kind of through what we feel. And I mean, I'm also lumping into that kind of our senses and the way we perceive the world, seeing, touching and everything, and that doesn't have to be part of feelings as well, but in my brain I kind of consider them.
And also like the brain, like I feel like it's kind of, you can't categorize the brain as like the rational one just because like it's a brain. Like brains are wild, like
Wild and for
no, but like think of like any like mental disorder. Like what it's telling you is coming from your brain, not your emotions. You know what I mean? Like that shit's crazy.
For real. I like looking at the photo. I see like just think automatically my brain goes to law, and so like thinking about law, and is that like made from like feeling or rationality? And then you can say like what you just said before, there's no like actual set thing of like what's moral, what's not moral, whatever. Like it's literally philosophy. This is the whole point of the subject. But like we do base a lot of our actions on the law, or a lot of the people do.
Well, yeah, we're bound to. I mean,
we do, or we should.
Yeah.
We do,
or both.
I feel
Well, it's dependent on, what stance you have.
But what do you have? What stance do you have?
Well, it depends. Circumstantial.
Depends on the law.
Yes.
Yeah, because, like, obviously you're not going to, like, murder someone, but you might, like, I don't know, steal a pack of gun or something. Like,
Well, there's also the issue of self-defense and, like, manslaughter.
yeah.
So it's like, I might have, like, accidentally killed you, but that's because you were trying to kill me.
Yeah.
Like, you would intentionally try to cause me harm.
So is that appealing to like your logic of your mind or the irrationality of your emotions?
Well, it's difficult. It's very difficult.
What do you
No,
think?
I think the logic of your mind, because it's the whole reasonable person test. And, like, also that's a law that's been built, like, upon ethics and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, what is it? Like, ethics plus law equals justice? Or is it the other way around? I don't know.
Well, but even that's something that's like been formed in our like Western society as well. So it's not just because our ethics are met with our laws and then we label that as justice. It's not justice everywhere. Like that is not everyone's definition of justice. And so we have used the combination of both how we feel something should be approached and how we think it should be approached to kind of make these things. But even then, I think, yes, the person is teetering between both of them, except they're actually standing balanced in the middle. And I think the combination of thinking and feeling is how we do make things, but both of those together, neither of them are actually foolproof.
No.
Yeah, so like you said that like we kind of need both is what you're saying. So if we're using this equally, and as you've like pointed out in the image, like the person is balanced between the two, then why do you think then there is like a tendency for like a negative connotation between being emotional, like thinking with your emotions rather than with logic? Even though you said that you require both, why do you think that there's this negative connotation towards the
Because
emotion?
women be, like, crazy.
Well, because I think that emotions do help guide decisions, but some decisions are made too rashly, not because they're made too emotionally, but because they're not thought through enough. And I think making decisions fast is sometimes lumped into the same boat as being too emotional about it. And what you were saying about women, I know you were joking, but it is kind of that whole societal like more set up for women to be
I wasn't.
joking.
No.
Oh,
I mean, but like you said, women be wild. Like, as in, like, I'm not trying to.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
I was.
cancelled.
No, I meant like
Society's perception of women
Yeah.
is
you know, like you don't want to be the hysterical one.
Yeah.
You want to be the guy who's thinking.
So you were talking about like how you're making decisions too rashly or like too quickly.
Yeah.
So you're saying that like the absence of like logic from like your mind, the absence of logic is mistaken for like irrational like with using emotions.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's a difference between absence of logic and presence of emotions, and you think those get confused. That's why that's like why the negative connotation of emotions are brought up.
The thing is, though, even that's hard because if you don't have the logic and you're making decisions rashly, that means you're not using your brain.
Does
And
that
you're
mean
just
using
using your emotions,
Okay.
which is the problem.
Okay.
So it's like, it kind of, then that's kind of a paradox because I've just explained to you why it's not actually you just using your emotions to come to a conclusion, and that's why it's considered irresponsible. It is, like, I've just said it's not that, but it actually kind of is that if you kind of try to define it.
In order to like actually evaluate and reason anything, you kind of need to take out emotion and just look at solid facts.
Right, so that's...
But why though?
But exactly, but is that what you think?
Because I feel like emotions are subjective, whereas if you think about the mind and facts, they are objective.
Why?
Because
What?
they're facts.
What?
Facts are facts.
But is it
But
because
maybe
everything-
a fact is that I really like maybe a fact is that I feel an emotion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but like you could also be a fact is that like in the case of manslaughter, you did kill this person, but like emotionally you could be like, I killed this person because they were like trying to attack me, or like
Yeah.
or because they had been threatening me for like months or something, and like that's not like
No, and I get that. So you would use your brain and reason and evaluation in order to actually make the verdict, and then use emotion in order to further solidify, like the actual sanction.
So like you're saying,
Sorry.
so you're saying like logic, like your brain basically is like to like review, like to initiate the understanding. You should go with your brain, and then to like kind of like round off the edges for like your heart.
Except,
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
This really off topic.
Yeah.
With your whole like, oh, that's just Western
Yeah.
values. Can you give like an example? Because I like generally disagree with that. Like the whole, oh, it's Western homogenization. I feel like that's just something people say to excuse non-interference in human rights abuses.
yeah. Oh, yeah, and I agree, because some of the examples of things were like, what was I going to say? Like, there'll be conflicts in a foreign, like in a different country, and we'll say, oh no, we shouldn't interfere because it's not, maybe it's their values, and I completely agree with that. It's
like,
not
have
okay.
you read
it's not a right
In
to
the Penal
communication.
Colony?
No.
Okay, basically he sees a torture system and it's really brutal, and he's like, but who am I to like
Yeah.
criticize it? And it's like,
Yeah.
shut up.
Well, that's like the whole idea of is it universability, which is that like
Universality?
No. It's like I've literally just learnt about it. It's so horrible. I can't remember.
Wait, like the Kant one or the...
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like, well, my culture says one thing, your culture says another. Like, we say murder's bad, you say murder's good. Well, am I to say it's like not bad? You know, do whatever you want. It's not my culture. Different societies have different things, and yeah, I kind of agree with what you're saying though.
Doesn't that bring in the fact that maybe this culture values emotion more, and
Yeah.
therefore they're using their particular context in which they feel that emotion to say murder is good? And doesn't that provide a good counter argument for emotions are not as worthwhile, or not at least equal, if we think of the balancing act, as rational thinking?
I think that we've been talking a lot about decision making, and like that has been our main kind of filter for evaluating mind over heart, or mind over like feelings and logic over feelings. But is that the context we like? Are we just approaching it in a decision making kind of context? Because it seems like we are, and that's good if we are, and then we can just nail it down to that. But is that like what we want to be?
Yeah, because I feel like the way that we judge like the morality of something is based on like the decisions that we make, and I feel like
Yeah.
the decisions that we make is a big part of how we judge people, and like the decisions that other people make is like how we kind of perceive them. It's like, well, how do they act in a scenario? What are the choices that they're making that help me perceive what kind of person they are? So I think it's mainly because like the decisions that people make is like a big part of how we perceive people and how we judge people.
Can we perhaps answer the question of, if we assume we're only talking about decision making in our discussion so far, does anything change if we stop talking about decisions and start talking about something else to do with mind, heart?
Well, if we were to take it to the context of the other discussion where we were talking about achieving happiness, and clearly you would want to like straight away off the bat you would say, yeah, that's emotion, because happiness is an emotion. But if you were to just follow your emotion and to go through life living that way, is there a possibility that it's less likely that you will end up content than if you kind of have to, you think it through and you consider all the factors that ways you could either increase your happiness or decrease your happiness? Or
I think that's it very well could be true that like the brain is like better at happiness or whatever, but that way like you're just going to end up miserable.
Yeah.
Like if you just analyze what could I get the most happiness out of.
But I think like being conscious of that as well can like also result in more happiness as it is. Like while it like literally drive you insane, at least you're conscious of the way you live. I mean, it like literally it would actually send you into insanity.
Yeah.
But at least you'd be conscious of the world, what's happening, and like your own self.
I think also to a point, it could be useful, because say you're in a situation that is really horrible, you found yourself friendless, you've got no interest, you don't do anything outside of school, and then if you are instead of just feeling things you're feeling, you methodically decide, I'm going to take up some new activities, I'm going to socialise with these people, I'm going to improve myself, that could provide you more happiness than just feeling what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Except then again, like if you are always aiming to be better,
Yeah.
then you will not end up happy
Yeah.
either, because you'll just be restless and always trying to get more.
So that's speaking to the theory that, like, that we kind of discussed earlier, that like your mind is more rational and more objective and
Yeah.
more methodical than your emotions that may be built more on impulse. But
Yeah.
because if, as you say, in your scenario, that's someone who may be being extremely depressed, their emotions will tell them to do one thing, but their
exactly,
mind,
yeah.
that's probably that we've said this is more rational, will probably say things that might be more beneficial to the person.
No, but often, with mental illnesses, it's the mind that is also affected. Yeah.
So it affects,
Sorry, continue.
like,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, yeah.
Oh, no, I know. I was just
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not
what,
agreeing.
like, but I genuinely, like, I can't, like, get my head around, like, the difference, because I was, like, but in that situation, I feel like their brain would just be saying, kill yourself.
Yeah, that's
Like,
kind of
it
what depression
would-
does.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't necessarily be thinking rationally, so,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, I just can't decide what is, like, the heart decision and what's the brain
But,
decision.
if it wouldn't be thinking rationally, then that's not rational thinking.
Yeah, so the brain, so the mind can have the possibility of being irrational.
Yeah.
So does that mean that the emotions or your heart can have the ability to be rational? And when does it?
Yeah,
flip
exactly.
over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's circumstantial, which I think most things are in philosophy. So it's like, in that case, it's like, well, because even if you did have depression, like, and it would overrule your brain, you would feel as though you would want to kill yourself. You wouldn't just think, you would also feel as though, like, oh, that's not bad, anyway. But going on for what you said a little bit ago, which is that, like, you, like, you create a method to, like, do something. I can't say that word right now.
No, I was
I was
trying to, like,
gonna
come to
try.
your rescue, I was a bit messy.
It's too late to be doing philosophy.
For real, like, it's bad. Anyway, so it's like, okay, I've got no friends, got no job, I've got no nothing, I'm depressed, I'm horrible.
Methodically.
Oh my god, Christine. Anyway, and so you think of those steps to get there, and you're like, okay, cool, now I got friends, now I can bring my heart into this and really feel this happiness. So it's like you use your brain to get there, and then use your heart as, like, to actually internalize and take it in.
Yeah.
The problem is, I
That's- I
feel
like
like with as much as that sounds like the ideal situation, realistically, you can't just isolate your emotions completely. Decide when you want to turn them back on. Like, if we're talking about a realistic human, you can't just decide to use your mind, only your mind in this circumstance.
Yeah.
And then your heart. So it's like you kind of have to decide which one. You can decide which one you want to prioritize. Maybe, like, you can go against one or the other if they are conflicting. But I don't know.
But then you fall off the wire.
Yeah.
Well, they've just gone
Going
rogue.
back
Yeah.
to the painting.
No,
I mean-
yeah, I get what you mean though.
And is it necessarily the case that the rational comes first and then you add emotion on top?
Not necessarily, because you feel, like, you could feel as though, like, ah, shit, I'm depressed, I need to, like, fix this, and you're like, okay, what am I going to do? I feel as if I need to do something. Bring your brain in, you do something, go back to emotion, and then it's a repetitive cycle almost, as everything in life is, and then you kind of just keep going with that pattern and just fix it.
The thing
Think
is,
about it, you know. Go
what
on.
if the emotion, if you were to start that way, what if the emotion that you feel is something that is not justified, or something that is fleeting, and then you've decided to act on it? Or the other way around, what if the thought you've had is not actually practical, or it's silly, and then you act on it, and then it affects your emotion negatively?
Pop off, okay.
How do you verify what emotions are emotions that are good and should be followed, or ones that are far-fetched and shouldn't be? And is that a thing, or is all emotions that you feel justified, or are none of them that you feel justified?
Well, that's the thing. No one really knows. This is the whole point of philosophy. Like, we talk and talk, and it practically gets nowhere. Well, not all the time, but, like, you just
No,
talk
don't
and your
say
heads
that.
explode
I feel
and you have no idea.
It's not the worst thing in the world to, like, follow your emotions
Yeah.
a little bit blindly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and does that mean
That's how you learn.
Does
Like,
that mean
maybe
reason?
you, like, end up, like, in... I was going to say Geelong.
Geelong?
Sorry.
Geelong.
You get to the philosophy thing not on time, but yeah, ultimately it all works out. Ben forgives you. Ben, do you forgive?
Absolutely not.
Okay, never
You know, it's
mind.
all sensational.
No.
Everyone loves Geelong. I don't know.
I was
that's
trying to
it.
wrap it up with, like, a forgiveness. Nah, it's not.
All right, so we're sounds like most of us are in agreement that there's some sort of balance, and also that not necessarily one is better than the other, the mind or the emotions. they have
They need
to
to be
work.
used
Circumstantial, but
Yeah,
yes.
combined.
They have.
Yeah.
They
Well, hold
have
on, those
their
are two
own-
different points though.
Yeah.
Do they have to be combined all the time, or can one be better than the other and the other be better than one in different contexts?
Yeah, I
Circumstantial.
want to use your one. It sounds so convenient. Where you're like,
Yeah, thanks.
let me put my brain here and then let me like absorb.
I know, it's
all
like,
those
let me just-
effects. It's like, okay, I will do that.
I feel like the best experiences come from when you're emotion driven. Like, when's the last time you met a friend? You're like, analytically, they would be a higher, like, quantifiably better friend. You're just like, oh my god, you're so fucking cool.
Except
you know?
though, what allowed you to make that?
Because
meeting
you
with your
just-
friend.
When it means you like reason the fact that you did just have like so much time. Like yeah, you feel it.
And you, yeah, but
then
you
reminisce.
now
back
you're
and
processing.
But like, it's like
and
a coincidence. Basically, most of the best things that happen in your life are basically just laid out there.
What about when you work really, really hard for a test and you get like a mad result? That's using your brain. That is method.
Yeah, but
Wait,
that's
what?
a bit
With
like
the
that's a bit like
Methodical.
a
Thank you.
It's a bit more of like a different situation. It's more like experiences.
have it.
That's based on like, you know, practicing and like it's a bit different of like a
So
No, no, I
the
get you.
experiences in life are the most important things, and the experiences in life are
it's like-
driven by emotions, not rationality.
yeah.
Whereas
So manic pixie dream girl.
getting a good test result isn't an experiential thing.
Well,
it's like a
the
practical
emotion.
thing.
Well, like actually using the method to get there and doing it and working for it, yes. And it's kind of like what I went back to, which is like brain feeling I really want to do well in this test, actually doing it, then feeling the emotion and like reward. So it's kind of like different circumstances, different variables, all of that.
Okay.
I also think there's something that seems in the same way that like it's women are also criticized for just doing things with their emotions. I feel like there's the other flip side where something like just doing things like feeling it all is like there's something kind of more like noble about that. Just like in like not for in all cases, but there's like this, you know, like there's that whole like movie stereotype of like that person who just like goes out and has that fun night and then is like has just followed their heart and just done everything irrationally and then they're more happy. Like, do we need to be rational to be fulfilled?
So are there any are there any like inherent negatives to thinking purely like rationally, like because you've talked about like well there's positives for like you know like doing with the emotions and going for it, but like what would be the negatives or positives of like purely thinking out of reason, logic, and
you would have-
methodically
I feel
thinking?
like
You would have
Like, everything is so considered.
Yeah,
It's,
like
feel
is it genuine? It's
You would end up-
genuine experience. Yeah,
You would
and
end
then
up isolated from everyone because you're like listing out all of like the
Yeah.
like they were just trying to have a conversation about like donuts or something, and they're
So
like,
it'd be-
and they're like, oh, donuts actually have a really high
It's
calorie
like by
intake.
talking
and-
about this, are we actually normalizing the consumption of something that leads to so many deaths? Yeah. Okay, have you guys read The Secret Life of Bees?
All right, hold on. Sorry. Let's not go there because we're just about out of time. But we have some interesting areas that we've explored. One, looking at the balancing act, but then also the perhaps superiority of the mind over the emotions, or the emotions over the mind in different contexts, and then also the idea that they have to necessarily work together, but then also the idea that in all circumstances, experiences are most important, and experiences are majority driven by emotion, not thinking, and if you overthink things, your experiences will be worse. So there's lots of different areas for us to explore, but we are out of time.
We'd be here all night if we were
We
talking
would
about
be.
this.